Hello! Am I live to everyone? Hello chat, can you hear me? This is a very important question for me and my personal game. Me and my personal life, you know? Are we all good and live? Yeah. Hey everyone, what's up? Everybody in the chat say hi! I've also decided to fix some of my internet. Hopefully, this means that the stream will not mess up this time. So, for the docket for tonight, we're going to be talking about templating changes, as well as the 2 new promo characters that we have set up for all of the testers. So that would be Andres, who is the character that you see right now on screen, as well as Rey Cal, who is the Varian Angel Varian? More like Angel, I guess. Angel would be the more appropriate term. So if everybody in the chat's hearing me correctly, just say hi. You know, I would love to have some feedback about whether or not you can hear me, because that's very important for a stream, you know? Having audience feedback is like basically the reason to stream anything, really. Alright. I think everything's set up. Hey, Roberto, what's up? Or Roberto. It really depends whether or not you want to pronounce it. Is it Roberto or Roberto? Like, is it very Spanishy? Alright, this is all great. Thanks, Roberto. Alright, that means we can head on to the module. So, let's see. Does everybody see the module correctly? I just need to double check on the stream whether or not it looks correct. Alright. This should be fine. There's always going to be a... Alright, stream went down for a little bit, but we're back. Look at some characters, as well as show some of the new templating that we have here. So, let me be completely clear. This is still in testing. Anything that you see here is never going to be the final product, as well as the fact that we need to understand Oh, that's great. Thanks, Roberto. You know, I'm Filipino, so a lot of my language is actually very Spanishy. Okay. So, we can talk about the characters. We can talk about the templating that we've done on them. Some changes. So, here's some of the big So, here's the docket, right? We're going to talk about some of the big updates. Show you some of the big things for the characters. Show you some of the new things. And then let's talk about the promos. Alright, so near the middle-ish to the end of the stream, we'll be talking about the promo characters that are actually in for testing. But I think it's very good if we just talked about some of the Wanderers first, to show you some how some of the templating has changed. Oh, and I'll finally be able to show off some of what the new reference cards will look like. So that'll be fun. But I'll show off some of the big changes when it came to testing and when it came to, you know, what we're used to. All right, so Rin, remember when we were talking about this stat called chill or frozen to replace the phrase opponent has X or stuff. So we've gotten rid of that because characters like Rin now actually have a different template. So in the old versions of BattleCON, Rin would have these 5 frost tokens, right? Oh, that's the references. Excuse me, 5 frost counters. So these 5 frost counters, usually Rin, right, would hit the opponent and then give frost counters that they have or that she's given them, right? This is a nightmare for multiplayer. Like, just long story short, wholesale, nightmare for multiplayer. Because now Rin has to create 5 different sets of counters. So 5 counters for each opponent that she has. And then she now has to simultaneously track how many counters each one of those opponents have. So on, so forth. This turned everything into a living nightmare because now you'd have to create more components. You'd have to do a lot of stuff. It was just overly complicated and really weird to give your opponents components. So now characters like Rin and characters like Agena and characters like Rin and Agena especially now just gain the counters themselves, right? So now Rin just gains frost counters when she hits people, or rather when she damages people. So she's been redesigned to fit this theme, making it so that it's more clear-cut, making it so that it's less complicated. This also means that Rin no longer needs that chilled keyword because it's just clear, you know, whether or not she has 5 or 3 chill, that's just it. So now her effects are worded as just frost 3+, right? This means this is a wording that implies reveal Rin has 3 or more frost. That's it. That's just it. Rather than having an entirely separate keyword to tell you, like, oh, this is the amount of frost the opponent has, you literally only just care about how much frost Rin has. So, therefore, you only have to care about this. And that's just way more simple, way less complex, and way cooler all in all. We've also done another thing. So, this is an old version of Ninja Mist, but notice how there's this box on the top. So, passive effects now kind of go into this box to tell you that they are effects that trigger at weird times, as opposed to effects that are just always on, or effects that are triggered timings. So the reason I said this was old is because this still has the defend keyword. We've decided to not use defend anymore and just use the term whenever or when you are hit, right? So it says, when you are hit, regain a frost. Simple as that, rather than adding an entirely new trigger keyword or trigger timing. We just made use of an old one that we've had. But now it's always going to go in this box. So it's clear that it has a different timing compared to everything else. So that's really the big change in direction that we've taken in terms of how we've decided to fix the characters. Rin has benefited from that. However, that doesn't mean we've gotten rid of all of those special keywords. Feilana is a great example of this because Feilana still has a keyword called conviction, which is you have conviction if an opponent's attack contains a copy of a card in your Gaius pile. This is just much simpler because there's no easy way to just say opponent has the same card as the thing in your Gaius pile. It's a bit long, so it's just easier to just say reveal if you have conviction and then reveal if you have no conviction. That's it. So the attack is just simpler. So for example, objection is just start if you have conviction. Become active player. Simple as that. Feilana is just much simpler that way. But yes. So note that for a lot of these things, it tends to be on a case-by-case basis, depending on how complex the character can get and how confusing and long the text can be. Yeah, so Christopher, you're absolutely correct. The UA spiel on Rin is wrong. You are absolutely correct. And I've already given this feedback and we already know this. So for the people on chat not seeing, so The top part says Rin has frost counters. Rin's attacks inflict frost, and future attacks are enhanced based on the amount of frost the opponent holds. This is no longer the case, and these blurbs, as we call them in testing, will be changed absolutely for sure. So don't worry about that. We caught this in testing already, and we're gonna change it. As I've said, these are old versions of the cards because we've already gone through multiple templating passes ever since these cards were made, and now we've already updated them. So unfortunately, we haven't exported all of the updated cards yet, and we haven't been able to put them on Tabletop Simulator for all of you to see. So if you see a mistake on a card, feel free to point it out because we might have missed it. But note that if the mistake is blatantly obvious, like maybe not like Rin's thing, but something like, you know, an attack. I say an attack has +3 power, but then the text on the card says +0 power. It might usually mean that we've already changed the card internally. Apologize again. It's new versions of the cards are usually made bi-weekly. So for the people who don't know, our playtesting practice is that we often switch games every week, right? So we playtest one game and then switch to a different game while we give the previous game some time to change cards and export, right? So BattleCON is this week, which means that we'll only be getting new cards for BattleCON next week at the very earliest. Yeah, Christopher's absolutely correct. Hey, Kevin! Welcome. Welcome to my wonderful stream. So, for people who are just coming in, we're talking about templating changes. We're also talking about the new promo characters and how they play and how some of the other promo characters have changed. Also, hi, Kevin. For people who don't know, Kevin's one of our playtesters. Great guy. If there's anything that is wrong in templating, Kevin probably knows about it because Kevin and I spent a good 5 hours hashing out all of the templates. So, yeah. Yeah. Unfortunately, it takes a long time to export like 100-something cards and then put them all on Tabletop Simulator. Goodness me. All right. So Wanderers. Who else has received major changes in the way that they work? Kai and the Jin are very simple as well. I think the Jin's actually a good example for this. All right, the Jin. The Jin also is similar to Rin, right? He's a character that gives the opponent stuff to mess with. And again, in multiplayer, this is a nightmare because multiple opponents mean that you're giving each one of them a copy, and it's just insane. So now the Jin just owns his wishes, right? However, he now has a special thing on his card that says opponent limited ante. This means that the Jin's UA gives the opponents the ability, right, to do something with his wishes. And of course, in this case, it would be to gain the granted effect on that wish. So, here's the Jin's bag. In the Jin's bag, we would have the wish. Nope, that's his reference card. You would have the Jin's wishes, such as grant me flights, which has the granted effect, and it just tells you the bonuses you get for having your wish granted. So, reveal my future. Behold, the future is revealed. And then, you know, granted, flip over to Jin's attack pair, blah, 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 blah. So, the big technical difference here is that the opponents do not have these components. The Jin technically owns these components. Oh, and of course, thank you so much for pointing that out, Benjamin. Much like in BattleCon Online, Guard is now a stat that's just on the card. So if you look at the bases as well, you'll see that Strike now just has 1, 4, 4, 1, 4, 3, 3, right? And Shot just has 1 to 4, 3, 2, 2. Of course, all the other bases just have 0. So now your attack pairs parse like this. So masterful Shot. There you go, quite masterful. What else? Oh, we've also done this cool thing with conditionals, right? I think Rin is still the best example here. This is the Rin hour. Nope, that's not the correct templating for that. Lana. I need to find somebody with this correct templating. There you go. So, notice how Feylana's end of beat effect on her UA says end optional. This is a big thing now. Similar to how we did it in BattleCON before, right? We've put some conditionals before the actual effect. Now, if an effect is a may, right? Some effects say like, end of beat, you may blah, 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 blah. It no longer says you may blah, 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 blah. It just says blah, 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 blah. And then now the effect is just optional. That way, you can just say, hey, I'm just not going to do this effect. This way, it's very clear that you can just do the effect or not do the effect. That's it. That's all. It's done. So, Bluey, since we're doing these changes, every single character is gonna get reprinted, essentially. And it's gonna come in, I believe Brad said they will come in at some point, and they will be available for everybody. I believe we're gonna reprint them with Unleashed as well. Don't quote me on that, but that's the intention, right? The intent is that if we're making this giant templating pass, every character in the game gets updated. Yes. That's what Brad has told me, and that's basically, I believe, what will happen. Hopefully nothing catastrophically wrong happens, and we get that, because I really want all the characters to be updated as well. So there you go. Those are some of the big changes when it comes to templating. So again, let's go back. Characters that give opponents stuff now actually just give themselves stuff. Guard is now a printed stat on the cards. Easier to read, much simpler to understand. And you have effects like Ninja Mist, which are now on this special box for timings that are different and weird. I believe Vekel has a similar thing, so I'll show you what it looks like on a character like Vekel. So, where is that? Nope, Vekel doesn't have one. Who has one in Wanderers? Korra. Korra has one for sure. There you go. See, Bristling has, when the opponent enters a space adjacent to you, you gain a thorn. Right? So there, they just get that special box to show you that it's an out of trigger timing that's weird and whatever. There you go. Alright, so we will group all of these because we want the board to look clean and pristine. Because we're going to be talking about the promos now. Kai, Wanderers, Feylana, the Jin. Alright, so we don't need these. Where's the promo bag? Here are the 4 promos that we're going to be talking about for today. And I'm going to give you a brief overview of their overhauls. Oh, a bag dropped. Whoopsie. So the shield on Ninja Mist. Okay, so if an attack has stun immunity, instead of listing a guard, it just lists that shield symbol, right? Because Ninja Mist, where are you? Ninja Mist has stun immunity. Therefore, the guard value is completely irrelevant. It is just a shield. There you go. It's a special symbol to just denote, hey, this thing, stun immunity. Because that just makes it easier to parse. It's not Soak. Soak is actually just... Oh, that's also a big thing that we have to talk about. Rin has this. Soak is now called armor for a multitude of reasons, but it's a very important reason, to say the very least. Armor is a thing that's already been predeterminedly defined in BattleCON, which is basically depletable soak. So in BattleCON before, right, if your opponent hits you 7 times in one beat, but you have soak 3, that soak 3 applies to each and every one of those 7 attacks. Armor is different from soak because the moment armor mitigates any source of damage, it's depleted. So for example, you have soak 5, your opponent hits you for 3, you have soak 5, your opponent hits you for 3, 3, and 3, right? You would take 0 damage because you would soak 5 on each of those 3s. However, if you have armor 5, you would mitigate 3, then 2, then 0, right? Because it would be 5, it would eat 3 damage, then get reduced to 2. It would then take another 3 damage, but only reduce 2 since you only have 2 armor left, and you'd be left with 0, and then you would mitigate no more damage afterwards. So that's very important, and that's the update on armor. Very important. So why did we do this? Twofold. Number one, this makes it way simpler and way more balanced for multiplayer, which is great for everyone and everything in our lives because healthy, balanced multiplayer is fun for people with big playgroups. Number two, multi-hit attacks no longer exist. So, fans of BattleCON War of Indines will, for example, know that Rookyuk's finisher, fully automatic. Come on, Rook. Hits multiple times in the same beat, right? Blah, 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 execute this attack again. This is no longer the template. This no longer exists. Multi-attacking is no longer a thing in BattleCON. Instead, this just gains more power, right? So instead of spending ammo to execute this attack again, what really just happens is you just get +2 power for ammo per ammo discarded. And that's just it. Right? So again, this is to help with multiplayer. This is to help with all of the weird rules, shenanigans that happen when a character hits you multiple times. It's just easier that way. It's just much simpler, right? It also helps fix a lot of the rule shenanigans as well as ease up on the armor problem. There you go. Roberto, exactly how armor works in Exceed. Well, these big tag team stealth cadenza nerfs. Number one, players no longer share soak when they're sharing the same space. So it's not even a nerf to cadenza at all. Yeah, multiplayer just now has different rules by default. So that's just how it is. You no longer share defenses with each other, which makes more sense. Yes, Kevin, that should say held. Yes, it's stun immunity. MAA7895. It is indeed stun immunity. Yeah. Kevin, we've already submitted that feedback. We already talked about this. Yes, it's wrong. It should say held frost 3+. All right. So those are the big changes. Hopefully nothing else pops into my head to talk to you about these changes. Let's move on to the promos. So let's save Andres and Rey for last. Let's talk about Takeshi and Oriax. So for people who watched the previous live streams, you've probably seen Takeshi and Oriax in action, and they're probably broken as all heck. And oh, dang it. Dang it, dang it, dang it, dang it, dang it. Oriax makes me eat my words, huh? I forgot. There's this new component that some characters might have, which is a status card. So, sometimes effects in BattleCon allow you to gain stats or benefits or effects that persist until the next beat. Of course, the proverbial example of this would be Cadenza's battery style, right? Which gives Cadenza priority +4 on the next beat. Where are you? Battery, yellow, yellow. There you go. The bag did a flip. Okay. Yeah, +4 priority next beat. That's it, right? So, sometimes it can get hard to track. So what we've done is now characters that do stuff like that now have a special card that just helps them remember. So I believe Oriax has a god that does this. Nope, it's not a god. Is it a finisher? There you go. End of beat, range 1 to 2. Trash on an active deity to gain 4 armor next beat. So this allows you to remember. It's just that simple. It's like the old status tokens that we had in BattleCON War, except now they're cards. Note that they're a bit thinner than regular cards, so it's not easy to mix up that they're like actual cards. See, they're a bit thinner. I don't know if I can easily show that. But yes, look, if we stack the 2 cards on top of each other, you'll notice that there's a black border that extends past this card because it's just thinner than the average card. That's currently in BCO only. Yes, the priority arrow means wins priority ties. Brian, oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, there's gonna be an upcoming reprint once we're done with this, but this thing's gonna ship a long time from now. Also note that the like it's just a templating fix for most of them. Trials is probably like one of the most quote-unquote balanced sets already at this point. So don't expect too many changes, but yeah. Okay. So that's a big templating thing, by the way, that now you've brought it up. So when an attack would win priority ties, it just has that arrow symbol instead of having an effect that says wins priority ties. And for those of you wondering, if an attack would lose priority ties, it no longer loses priority ties, right? How do I explain this? Because losing priority ties is the same thing as just lowering the attack's priority and then giving it wins priority ties. Does that make sense? So for example, Fallen Heart is 0 priority wins priority ties. This would be the exact same thing. Sorry, this not, so that's it, right? But if we wanted to say have an attack that said 0 priority loses priority ties, what you could do is instead just say priority -1 wins priority ties, right? Because it's the same thing. Hopefully that's clear. Yeah, I feel like those products are still pretty good. It's going to be a while before we even get the characters printed and stuff. So it'll be a good while. But yes. But yeah, hopefully the math makes sense, right? So if this wins priority ties, it would be faster than attacks at 0 priority, but slower than attacks at 1 priority. And then if we did 0 loses priority ties, it would be slower than attacks that are 0 priority and faster than attacks at -1 priority. So it's the same thing as -1 priority wins priority ties, because again, that would be faster than attacks at -1, but still slower than attacks at 0. So it is exactly the same. This way we only need to have one symbol and we only need to have one effect, and it standardizes everything. So promo characters, it depends on what you mean by promo characters, right? There's promo characters like the ones that are coming in Unleashed, which don't come in the Wanderer's box, but come on their quote-unquote on their own. So stuff like Murderum or characters like, for example, Oriax are not in the Wanderer's box, but they are promo characters. So they are getting that templating update. But if you're talking about promo characters like, say, Bruce Lee from Dragon Tides, or Prince Aelin, or the Mage War characters, or you're talking about basically characters that we don't own, we actually don't have the rights to reprint them willy-nilly because of licensing and stuff. So those characters, don't really expect them to get reprints, right? Because promos, by their very definition, are just usually one-time things, and there's like a limited time where we can print them. Yeah, that's right. The arrow just means plus 0.5, essentially. So, what is Oriax all about? Actually, before we do Oriax, do you mind if I do these? The reference cards, which are freaking amazing. Amazing. All right, so here are the reference cards. Let's talk about these reference cards, okay? So I was telling all of you about how awesome they are. Look at how awesome these reference cards are, right? Just look at that. Just look at that. Oh, beautiful. No problem, Brian. Look at how beautiful this is. It's amazing, isn't it? Are you happy? Because this makes me very happy. So now you can easily line up the cards, see what they do, right? Mohammed, yes. It's being applied to literally everything and everyone. Well, that's a misprint. Okay. Note that this should not say plus 0 to 11 range. That's absurd. That's a misprint that we that's a misprint that we need to submit feedback for. Yep. So now you can just line up cards. So say I want to see, hey, what does this attack look like with Grasp? Move the card down. Bam, you can see the attack pair. You want to see what this attack looks like? Bam. You want to see Drive? There you go. We've lined up the Drive. You want to see what their finishers are like? You want to see what their switches look like? So this is Switch, right? Switch Grasp. Switch Drive. Of course, Switch Unique Base. And as well as Switch Dodge. So we've done this cool thing as well where the finishers are not here, right? So there's a black bar here to indicate that they don't connect to anything. So this is pretty cool. I hope you guys enjoy it. I'm glad all of you are liking it. Thanks, Frederick. So cool reference cards. Really liking how they're turning out to look. Really cool. Really fun. Also, one thing I noticed about the shot base that I've never really noticed before is that I always thought the blue guy was shooting the shot, but it turns out there's the red guy in the background shooting the shot. And you notice that the red guy is always the one hitting the blue guy. So I always thought shot was weird for doing that, but apparently the red guy's just in the background throwing the fireball. Anyway, enough of the references. Let's talk about Oriax. Yes. So everyone will also have their own base reference because it has their unique base on it. So it'll be unique to them. Also, the space on the back of the style usually gives you the definition of a bunch of keywords. So like, Oriax has desperation when blah, 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 blah. So this is also for easy reminders of like what triggers what. Because some cards will say that, oh, this does a thing if you have desperation, blah. Yup, Stun Guard is now just straight up a stat. Okay, so what's different with Oriax? Just a few over sweeping changes. All the gods have changed to not be basically broken. But his desperation mechanic has changed as well. This means that desperation... So, for example, if you've gotten rid of 3 of your gods, you activate desperation, right? But now the desperation effects are in addition to whatever you did. So, for example, Gantzern, whatever, right? This guy has revealed the opponent cannot retreat. But the desperation effect is that reveal the opponent cannot advance. Which means that if you are in desperation, the opponent cannot retreat and the opponent cannot advance. Huh? So that's how this new stuff works. Notice how the gods are considerably weaker than they used to be. So like straight up, this doesn't just give you stun immunity, right? But there you go. Desperation effects are also still pretty powerful, but again, these tend to be much weaker on average. Gantzern is still pretty friggin' good. So Ryan, that's true, right? But at the same time, how do I put that? Maybe. But I think it'll just be in the rule book. I think it'll just be something that people will get used to really quickly. Because it's just an up arrow symbol. Like you learn it once and it's done, right? A big portion of the thing is that we tried our best to not just add a bunch of keywords that would make you reread the rule book over and over again, right? And the arrow is basically the only one that pushed through. Everything else didn't. Everything else is just like on the card at this point. And if it's not on the card, it's on a component that's on the board. So for example, this one requires desperation. What's desperation? Your card tells you what desperation is, right? So, but yeah, I understand the reservation about it. Yes, it is compulsory. Well, currently it is required that you must spend that 2 life to become active player. Yes. Yeah. I think it'll just become a standard for cards at this point. Kind of like how the asterisk exists in the game to tell you, but I understand that the asterisk also means that the text is still on the bottom. But yeah, this up arrow I think won't be too problematic. It's not on a lot of cards, and it's usually on just finishers. And really, here's the thing, right? You're saying you don't want the symbol to interfere with how the gameplay works. Finishers in BattleCON just win priority ties without saying it, right? If we look at a character with actual just... a character who's not from this set, right? Let's say Tatsumi. So look at her finisher. Her finisher just doesn't even say that she wins priority ties, but it does. Right? But it just does. So that symbol is really there to just help you remember that that is just a core rule of the game. Again, this is the most common case. It's for finishers. I can only imagine like 4 different cards that actually are not finishers but still win prio ties. That are styles, by the way, right? Like, we're not talking about cards that give you an effect that wins prio ties, like Seth's unique ability, because that doesn't have the symbol at all on it, right? I'm talking about a style that would have wins prio ties on it. or a base that has wind prioritized on it. I can like name 4 or 5, but out of like 100 something characters, it's probably fine. BattleCON is not bringing. Yeah, I don't think it'll be too hard to learn. Because the goal of the templating update is to make it so that veteran players can just parse cards easier, right? It'll just be easier to know what the cards are doing, to know the stuff. So there you go. So what else has changed? So Oriax. So other big changes to Oriax are Absolute is no longer absolutely amazing. It still has that armor, but if Oriax is faster, he loses the armor. Thank goodness. The big change is probably on his red and painful styles. Sorry, destructive and painful. So these no longer just make your opponent discard stuff, which was weird and bad. So this gives you more armor if you are desperate or are in desperation, so that's good. And this one deactivates any active deities. So the way Oriax's UA works is now a bit different than before. Essentially what happens is that Oriax has a bunch of face down deities at the start of the game. And then what happens is during the ante, you can flip them face up to make them active. And then at the end of a beat, any active deities get deleted from the game. So what this attack essentially does is that it allows you to take a face-up deity and turn it face down, which means that it doesn't get deleted during the end of the turn. So this one essentially allows you to, quote-unquote, regain your deity. So, Muhammad asks, does this mean we can clash finishers with knives, for instance? That's a great question. The answer is, if 2 attacks with wins priority ties meet, active player goes first. That's it. So, who's active player? Active player is a status that is retained by whoever was active player last beat, right? So, this means that whoever was faster last beat would win that quote-unquote clash, because it's not actually a clash. So, if 2 attacks with win prio ties meet, whoever was faster last beat wins. That's it. Oriax is probably gonna get something similar to the Jin's wishes. So it's not gonna be like art of the gods themselves, but maybe like just a thing to like maybe the symbols for the gods or something. But I highly doubt it's going to be a different art god for each one. So yeah, overall, we've nerfed a lot of stuff on Oriax. He should be more in line with the power level of the characters. He also has less power from Wrath because goodness, Wrath was too good. There you go. And that's just Oriax. We're done-iax with the Oriax. Oriax box. Shove it in there. Oriax. So let's move on to Takeshi. So Takeshi's basically gotten a complete overhaul as well. Big change would probably be his unique ability and the weapons. Yes, you can Fortune Buster if you wanted to. So here's Takeshi. What's the big thing about Takeshi? Simple. Now he doesn't have a... Now he just trashes weapons when he's stunned and immediately regains a weapon. That's it. So rather than having to dance with his weapons so much, Takeshi just does it whenever he's stunned. And effects that used to force him to change weapons, such as throw, now just instantly stun Takeshi. Right? This streamlines things a little bit, and it's cool. The weapons have also significantly changed in the sense that a lot of them now, quote-unquote, work, in a sense. So, for example, Butter Knife used to only hit at range 1, right? However, now it doesn't have that restriction. It now just trashes itself if you hit the opponent while they're very far away from you. Same thing applies to stuff like the Musashi, as well as the Toothpick. So the big thing about Takeshi is that the melee weapons, so these ones, tended to be a bit worse than the ranged weapons. Mostly because the melee weapons had very, very huge restrictions on his ranges. And that's not Gucci. So they've all been changed to be more in line and more in balance. There you go. I think the only unchanged one is the Skull Blaster, which is great, by the way. Love Skull Blaster. So yeah, Chili Dispenser, for example, no longer just ignores guard all the time, and instead gives the opponent vulnerable, which is a new keyword that says they cannot gain guard, armor, or stun immunity. There you go. So it burns them next beat, not this beat. So those are the weapons. Overall, a lot of Takeshi's cards retain their shapes, with the big difference on Surprise and Arsenal. So these three cards are basically the same as they used to be, but now Surprise and Arsenal are different. So Arsenal is now the thing that lets you activate a weapon despite not being stunned, right? It allows you to tutor for a weapon that you might need. But now that the weapons don't have big range restrictions on them, Takeshi can actually stack weapons now, at least for one beat, because Arsenal stuns you after you use it. Lore. Oh, Ben and MAA, trust me, lore is great. You're going to see some awesome new art. You're going to see some awesome story. It's going to be fun. Don't worry about it. Grand Chronicle, mwah, chef kiss, right? Okay, so what the heck? Arsenal. So Arsenal basically lets you do that thing where, where did I put the weapons? Here. So like say you have Skull Blaster on, and then you just turn on the Musashi during the beat. It's still pretty good. It essentially allows you to tutor out some extra damage onto your weapons, or tutor out some extra triggered effects like pushing with the breeze shooters. But that's really it. It's not really it's not as good as it used to be. And Surprise is now the other half of old Surprise, which means that Takeshi now just trashes all of his active weapons. This means that, for example, he was using the Musashi, he would no longer have vulnerable, and he could get rid of it and have stun guard still. Or if, for example, he was using the Butter Knife, right? He could gain the bonus of the priority without having the loss of power. It's essentially what Surprise allows you to do. And then Surprise lets you gain a new weapon. Also, Surprise's stat line is now +1/+1, which is amazing on a character like Takeshi, who gets cards that are also just +1/+1. So now, like, Musashi Surprise would be like +0 to 1 +2 +2, and that's a really good stat line. So don't let the card deceive you. It's pretty good. I mean, I gotta love the lore. For people who don't know, the Grand Chronicle will include a lot of art that is made especially just for the Grand Chronicle. So I can't show any of that on stream. Sorry, but it's gonna be hype. It's gonna be super hype. Sir Blobbington. Okay, let's see how good my chops are for lore. Sir Blobbington is the slime that used to belong to Aaron Ross, who died. And Sir Blobbington, not sure if Sir Blobbington survived the raid on the laboratory, but I know that Sir Blobbington used to belong to Aaron Ross. But did you know that in the world of Indines, slimes like Sir Blobbington are proto-computers? So in Indines, it's not a technological age for most of the world, right? Only Willot, the city of elves, actually has working computers. Everything else is kind of like medieval era stuff. And slimes in the world of Indines are essentially programmable living beings that can store data and store information. So essentially, slimes are living computers. Hence why Aaron Ross would have one, because Sir Blobbington is basically his database. So there you go. Some lore for you, lore nerds. But yes, these are the big changes to Takeshi. Yeah. That's pretty much it. That's pretty much what happened with Takeshi. It's just an overall balancing of his cards. Takeshi was testing a bit too strong in terms of like how consistent he was with his weapons. He was basically keeping his weapons on for like 5 turns straight. And that wasn't really healthy because he could just like turn on, say, Chili Dispenser, and then suddenly your opponent just does nothing. And it's pretty rough. But also it was pretty rough for Takeshi himself because he could get stuck with weapons he didn't want, right? And that's just no good. For example, like he would be stuck with a literally useless weapon like Butter Knife at range 4. And Takeshi could not do anything about it unless he trashed it with Surprise. So there you go. Takeshi, updated. Go back in the box, Takeshi. All right. I guess it's time for the people of the hour. Andrus and Rey. Andrus, my boy. Welcome to the Black Parade when I was a young boy. Andrus has some components to him. Of course, his 2 tokens. So, who is Andrus? What is Andrus, and what the heck does Andrus do? Andrus is Vana modernized. Andrus has 2 distinct blade tokens, one of which is the Demon Claw, and the other one is the Rhyme Hazard. Cool. You can see it in his art as well. His full art depicts both of his weapons. So, Andrus Dokartai is lore-wise a knight of Jeffries, who is one of Murderum's knights. So he's a royal bodyguard. He protects Princess Murderum. Not that Princess Murderum needs any protecting, because she freaking wields a giant warhammer and wears heavy armor everywhere. But regardless of that fact, Andrus is part of her entourage or her party, and yeah, he's one of her knights. I have no idea what K is. I have no idea what Neuromeal K is. Sorry. No idea. I have no idea on the lore Neuromeal K. It's an intelligent slime blobby thing. No idea. Maybe it's a blob that gains sentience. I have no idea. So Andrus has 2 distinct blade tokens. Each of these provide different effects, and he may use them separately or together. After the use, they must be reclaimed manually at the end of each beat. So Andrus used to basically be kind of like Vana modernized. He essentially has the power and then the speed, or in this case the range, or the defense, on 2 different tokens, and he can anti one or anti both of them to gain both the benefits. It's a pretty interesting ability, really cool. So yeah. So one of them gives him armor, and then the other one just makes him deal more damage. And it also reduces the opponent's priority next beat. So it's pretty good, pretty fun. It's all about understanding when you should be spending your tokens, when you shouldn't be spending your tokens. Simple as that. How does he regain them? He regains them if he doesn't use any of his tokens. That's it. Simple, easy. Let's go over his styles. More in depth than the first 2, because we actually have no idea what his cards do. So Flourishing, this also allows us to glimpse the new templating. Start blade antied. Simple. You understand what it means, right? Start, you anti the blade. Done. That's what the effect does. So this will only activate if you anti the blade. What does it do? Avoid attacks outside this attack's range. Pretty powerful effect. So that means if your range is 1 to 2, so long as your opponent is not in your range, your opponent will miss. And this is really, really powerful, really good. It is a really slow attack, however, but that's fine. This synergizes really well with his cards that move him. So something like Slash, which advances him 1. So say you're at range 4, then you do Flourishing Slash. Your attack's range only 1 to 3. Your opponent's at range 4. They're not in range of your attack. So your opponent misses, and then you step in and slash them. Pretty good, pretty simple. Flourishing is probably the best with Drive. Again, because Drive has quote-unquote effective range that isn't actually range. I believe signature moves are just gonna win prioritized, like finishers. That's it. At least that's what I think, right? They're just gonna be like finishers, like actually just like finishers. They're just gonna win prioritized. But that's just what I think. We haven't finalized on that, but that's what I think that they should just essentially do. They just all win prioritize, at least. Or maybe some of them win prioritize and some of them don't. Who knows? We'll see. So that's Flourishing. Falling. Before Advance 3, if you move past the opponent, Armor 3. Really good attack, right? Really good attack. If there's anything you're noticing about Andrus, Andrus actually doesn't have a lot of priority and also doesn't have a lot of stun guard. That's interesting, right? That's because he has soak on one of his things, and this thing gives the opponent negative priority. So if you hit with a Demon Claw, you actually pseudo gain priority next beat. Hacking. Start. +2 guard per anti blade. This is his only defensive card. Still pretty good. It's +1 power, and then if you anti just Demon Claw on it, that's like 3 guard +2 power. Pretty good. If you wanted to gain bonus range, it's still pretty good. And for a card with guard, it's not slow at all. It's still priority +0. Twin. So Twin is, oh my gosh, this thing has great hit confirm. So if you anti 1 blade, advance 2. If you anti 2 blades, advance 3. Super good, right? Because if you anti both your blades, this thing is like power +2, range +0 to 2, gives your opponent less priority next beat, and then you gain armor 3 when you hit the opponent. But more than that, you also advance 3, which means that you can basically hit from full board with the Twin. And it's pretty scary, pretty good. Andrus has a lot of hit confirm. It's pretty fun. Yeah, dude. They're super cool. And Retrieval is another way to regain blades. So hit, regain a blade that you did not anti. That's it. It's his only fast card. So it's pretty good for just being fast. Notice how he has a lot of retreat on his card. This one has a retreat, this one has a retreat, and this one has a retreat. So Retrieval, Hacking, and Flourishing are all retreat effects. Despite not having a lot of minimum range, he actually has a lot of minimum range because Falling is advanced 3. This one's advanced 2 or 3. So he actually wants to stay at around range 2 to 3 to get the most out of his cards. And Slash. Oh, Slash. Slash is great. It basically allows you to double up on the hit effect of one of your blades that you antied. So say if you antied Rhyme Hazard, you can activate Rhyme Hazard again to gain armor 3 again, to have armor 6, for example. Or you could just Demon Claw and then just give your opponent prio -2 next beat. Super good, super scary. Slash, pretty good base. Synergizes with a lot of his kit, giving him the stun guard he so desperately needs. Magical stun guard 3, everyone. So it's pretty good. Defense is pretty good. We haven't looked at his finishers. Where are the finishers? Oh, there you go. So we have Flash Cutter, which is range 1 to do, power 5, prio 4, guard 4. After you regain all blades, and then you get some free repositioning. This looks very similar to Gadot's planar crossing. Because it's basically that, it allows you to modify your attacks. Also note that if you just anti both your blades, you can just regain both your blades immediately. So you can anti both your blades on Flash Cutter and then regain them at the same time. So it's like a combo card. And Dancing Blade, which is a really interesting finisher. Not that great in terms of hit confirm, but remember that you can always anti your blades. So this is actually range 3 to 5, which isn't so bad if your opponent has no dodge. So when you hit, you can spend the second blade for bonus power. Not very powerful finishers, not amazing, not something I'd write home about, but good enough. Andrus is a very interesting character. I like him a lot. So Andrus, go back into your box. Or your bag, whatever. Bag box, box bag. Up to you what you want to call it. It's all great and fine and dandy. And now we're gonna move on to Rey. Rey, my baby Rey. The Heavenly Sojourner. Note again, Rey's art is not final, so do not be worried that it looks like a sketch. She is not a burgundy. That's for sure. Rey. I need your finisher. These are your references. But really what we need are your seals. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Those are her seals. All right, let's complete Marco Bingo. So really, a card like Enraptured would definitely pair really well with Drive to give it that hit confirm it so desperately needs, right? Okay, so what does Rey Cal do? Long stuff. Rey has 8 talisman markers. I've only brought out 4 because the 8 is actually just a dupe of these 4, so you get 2 of each of these 4. So you have 8 talisman markers, which you can set down as traps on the field, right? And if the opponent moves on to the trap, you flip it face up, and then it does a thing. So she's basically a trap character, similar-ish to Melandrax, but not as controlling of movement as Melandrax. So rather than being a tricksy character, Rey is more of like, if you step into a trap, you just explode, which is pretty cool. I like that design as well. Chip. Oh, see? Okay, so chip is a keyword. Chip is basically the opponent loses life. So if you took damage this beat, the opponent loses 3 life. Chip is just the keyword that means that now. So yeah, we've just changed it to mean that. Simple as that. That's it. I think that's the only new keyword that's shipped. Yeah, that's the only new keyword. I don't think there's a lot of other new keywords. Oh, there is another new keyword. It's called avoid, but like that's self-explanatory. Avoid is just a keyword that means attacks blah 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 don't hit you, right? That's just what it means. But it's self-explanatory, so I think that's fine. Okay, so she has 8 talismans. So what do her talismans do? So you have Retribution, which is if you took damage this beat, your opponent loses 3 life, which is chip 3. This basically means that if you whack her, and she's a generally slow character with some stun guard on her, and her unique base has stun immunity, the opponent takes 3 damage if you hit her. That's it. Chains. If you move on to the thing with chains, you can push or pull the opponent. So that means if your opponent goes on to the chains, You flip the chains face up, and once their movement ends, you get to move them, which can easily make opponents miss, which can easily put them in your range and make you hit them. Really powerful card. Oh, vulnerable's also there. You're right, Kevin. So yeah, vulnerable and chip are the only two new keywords that got shipped. Chip is the only keyword that doesn't have reminder text on it, because vulnerable always appears with reminder text. So might is simple. It just gives Rey +3 power. So note that retribution and might are very similar. They just give Rey more ways to damage you. And silence. Prevent all further triggered effects printed to the opponent's 1,000 bases. Woo! This thing is really strong. Like scary. We might have to change it, but silence can get pretty good because it allows you to negate end of beat triggers. So just imagine Rookyuk not being able to regain his ammo. Oh, that's not nice. But yes, there you go. Silence. Very cool card. Very powerful. So one thing you may not notice is that Rey only has 2 copies of each of these things. So she has a total of 8. And she can place one down every turn. 2 things to note. Number 1, the things that you put face down stay there. Right? So even if the beat ends, they stay there for as long as they're not activated. This means that if for some strange reason your opponent doesn't activate any of your traps, the board can get filled with traps. It just becomes completely riddled with traps. So yeah, she can riddle the board with traps. But here's the second big thing. Her traps are not easily regainable. She only has 1 card that regains her traps, and that's Seal. And note that Seal only hits if a trap activates. Which means that at most, she either uses up a seal to regain a seal, or she doesn't hit the opponent just to regain a seal. What does this mean? This means that if the opponent somehow finds a way to easily get rid of all your traps, you will run out. For sure. You will absolutely run out of traps. And once you're out of traps, Rey becomes super weak. Her cards do not support... so for example, some of her cards are just good if you have traps. And the moment that you no longer have traps, the cards become bad. Really bad. Like super bad. Bye, Robert. Take care. So, let's look at the cards. Sacrificial allows you to choose a place talisman, flip it up, and then activate it. A really good card. It essentially allows you to proc one of your things without the opponent stepping on them. So if the opponent's dodging your stuff too much, you can still punish them by doing Sacrificial. Faithful it's your defensive card. It allows you to gain a lot of effects. And the big thing here is that it prevents her from being pushed or pulled, which is really good if the opponent has a lot of effects that move you. One big thing, though, is that Faithful cannot pair with movement. So Faithful Burst and Faithful Drive, both really good attack pairs, would not actually work because you cannot advance or retreat. So Faithful is a really good card, but very awkward, to say the very least. Divine. So whenever a talisman is activated, it remains in play face up instead of being depleted. A talisman cannot be activated twice during the same beat. Divine. Oh my gosh. So Divine is also a slow defensive card. It has effective Stun Guard 3, magical Stun Guard 3. And it allows you to essentially prolong the effectiveness of your traps. So you can keep the traps face up sorry, you can keep the traps in play even if your opponent steps on them. So if your opponent is dodging or doing some weird thing, you can divine to make sure that they don't just eat up all your traps. Enraptured. Enraptured is really fun. So, start a beat, pull 1 space, hit, push 3. This might not seem very exciting, but I just have to show you a situation. One situation, and I hopefully will convince you at how amazing this card is. Sorry, let me pronounce that correctly. How amazing this card is, right? Let's look for Cadenza. All right. Let's say I do play Enraptured, right? Something like Enraptured Seal. I play my... So, number 1, your traps are unseen by the opponent, so they don't know what traps you're putting down, of course. And let's just say I put this one here. The attacks are revealed. Boom. All right, I pull the opponent onto the trap, and it flips. Really good. It essentially allows you to free activate a trap almost whenever you want. Plus, the push can be really good, because what if you had 3 traps here, and then you just hit your opponent and push them 3, and then it just activates all those other traps too, so now your opponent's just like getting like triple trap activated. And Enraptured's pretty good. I don't think I need to convince you anymore. And Angelic. Angelic is really good for spacing. Rey doesn't really want to stay in melee. She has a lot of minimum ranges. Sorry, not a lot, but she has some minimum ranges. And she's not really good at straight up slugging. She really wants to create distance between her and the opponent to force the opponent to advance into her. Because again, she needs that space to set up the traps, right? So by having the opponent advance towards her, she's forcing them to activate the traps, which is pretty good. So yeah, Angelic. And of course, her unique base, Seal, which is stun immunity. And then this board just hits... This is a full board range attack if your opponent activates a talisman. And then end of beat, return a depleted talisman to your supply. Unfortunately, even though Sacrificial Seal will look like it works, note that Sacrificial says it is not considered activated, which means that Seal will not proc off a Sacrificial, which is unfortunate. But it can still work. So how can it still work? Simple. The opponent is here. So let's say the strap's here. I play Sacrificial Seal, right? Start a beat, choose a place talisman. Let's say I activate my chains. So now I push or pull the opponent. Push. This gets flipped, right? Might. And then now, Seal is a full board range attack. And it's dealing 6 damage. Afterwards, I get to retreat 1, and then I regain a depleted Seal, preferably one of the 2 I just used. Pretty good. And now let's look at her overdrive finishers. It's kind of like Hollowed, yeah, on you're talking about Enraptured. Enraptured very much reminds me of Hollowed from Mikhail. Okay, so Celestial Nova. Range 1 to 2, power 3, priority 2, stun immunity. It has 2 armor. Hit. Push as far as possible, plus 2 power per activated talisman. Note that this is in addition to whatever your talismans are already doing. So if you whack your opponent into, say... like this. So you whack them, blah. So they activate both the mites. So you gain +6 power plus +2 power for each talisman activated. So that's plus another 4. So that's +10 power. And then you deal 13 damage. Pretty good, pretty scary. Her other finisher is Rain of Swords. So it's range X, power 7, priority 8. Really good. So, what is X is all spaces adjacent to 2 talismans. This is really poor wording, but it essentially means that the opponent has to be between 2 talismans. Because, right, this space is adjacent to 1, 2 talismans. So this is basically the move to punish your opponent for not picking talismans. Again, it's still dodgeable by dodge. That's true and completely fair. But yes, if your opponent decides to not do anything and just stay where they are rather than move into your traps, they'll eat a Rain of Swords and they'll be very sad for it. So that's Rey Cal. Her main weaknesses are her very limited resources as well as her severe lack of damage. Notice how all of her cards are power -1 or power +0. Yep, Rain of Swords essentially needs you to have seals set up. But it's not that hard. You actually only need 1 seal, right? Because during ante, you can just place a seal there. So you only really need 1 seal beside your opponent. And then you just set up the other seal during ante. And then they get Rain of Swords. Sworded. Swords. Hey, Beanborg, what's up? Couldn't 2 traps be... no. Okay, so are you talking about 2 traps like this? So it's not between, right? It's adjacent to 2 talismans. So they have to be exactly between, right? It has to be this formation. It cannot be like this. Because the space that Cadenza's on is not adjacent to 2 talismans. It's only adjacent to 1 talisman. No problem, Radamis. Sorry, I can't pronounce your name. I'm bad. Ma, it can't be adjacent. It can't be on the seals because the moment the opponent steps on the seal goes away. Like whenever the opponent steps on a face down seal, it gets flipped. The seal gets flipped. You activate the effect. And then it goes away. So at no point in time can your opponent be on a seal for your attack to work. Unless, of course, it says, like, activated a seal. But that's already what seal does. By the way, we're changing the name on seal to not be seal because these things are called seal. So we can't have a thing. We can't have the base be the same name as the component. That's just insane and really hard to track. Yes, Muhammad is absolutely correct. You can have multiple X's with 2 seals. So, with greater than 2 seals. So if we did this, for example, so the space Rey is on and the space Cadenza are on, are both within the attack's range. If we did this, for example, right, then this space, and this space are all in the attack's range. Or if it's like this, then this space would be in the attack's range, but these spaces would not. Yes. Rain gets blown out by a burst. Maybe or maybe not. Maybe, but maybe not. It does get really dumpstered by burst and dodge. But again, a lot of finishers of this nature tend to just get dumpstered by burst and dodge in that sense. So yeah. Again, rain is a punishment for people who don't want to move. I think it's much better than stuff like Red Moon Rage because Rey is a character who is built around forcing you to not move, or rather making you scared to move. So it's not unreasonable that your opponent might not dodge or burst out of fear that they'll proc something like +3 power on your sealed turn and then you just dumpster them, right? Because if your opponent bursts on the turn that, like, if they burst into something like switch sealed, they take 7 damage. Like, that's not fun. I don't know what we're renaming seal to. It might be like chains or something, or bindings or something. But yeah, don't worry about it. It will be renamed and it will be fine. So those are the kits. I believe, so for this docket, what we've done is talk about the major changes in BattleCon, which include new keywords, a change in the way that we handle characters that give components to other characters, changes to armor, as well as guard being a printed stat on cards rather than a stat just written in the text box. We also went over Takeshi, Oriax, and how they changed. Hopefully they're more balanced now. And we had a brief overview of Andrus, the Royal Bodyguard, and Rey Cal, the I don't know what her gimmick is. The Heavenly Sojourner. By the way, for the lore nerds out there, Rey Cal is a Virian. So this is very funny. So Vincent said something along the lines of, "Oh, reminds me of Hollowed." Well. Rey is a Virian. You know who else is a Virian? Mikhail. They are indeed angels. Well, no, they're not angels, they're Virians, okay? Which is a kind of alien in the world of Indines, but whatever. They're Virians. They're cool. Rey Cal has a big thing. If I remember correctly, she's a Virian. She is a dean at Argent University, a dean of divinity magic, no doubt. And her big thing is that Virians incarnate into the world of Indines, right? So originally they have no physical form in their plane, but then their bosses, whoever their bosses are, say, "Oh, you have this sacred mission, go to the world of Indines and incarnate." So they incarnate and become people on the world of Indines. But Rey doesn't know her mission yet, right? Usually a Virian finds out what their mission is, and then that becomes their life's purpose. And when they fulfill that mission, they ascend back to the light realm, and then they gain a new set of wings. So in Virian terms, wings determine how powerful you are. The more wings you have, the stronger. I believe Rey only has 1 set of wings, but Mikhail has 2, which means that Mikhail has incarnated at least twice into Indines. Rey only has 1 pair of wings. Her lore is that she's a Chancellor at Argent because she's trying to amass power. She's trying to amass resources because she doesn't know what her holy mission is, right? So she's just setting up for it despite not knowing what it is. And she's been waiting years for it and it hasn't come. So she doesn't know what she's doing. She's just waiting there. Yes, Violet. She's hot. To be fair, this is Indines. Like, all the characters are hot. Let's be clear. All of them are hot. Rey, hot. Mikhail, hot. Let me take a random character from this box. Hey, it's Rukyuk. He's pretty hot. Cadenza, hot. Robots, hot, right? Characters are very charismatic in Indines. They're very nice looking, to say the very least. So now we'll move on to our final stretch of the show, where I take your questions. So feel free to ask me anything about Indines, whether it's about the updated templates, it's the updated balance changes, how's playtesting, how about lore. I can answer all of these questions and more to the best of my abilities, right? If you ask me something along the lines of like, what's the new Exceed season? I'm gonna tell you it's Shrek, okay? I mean, I don't know if Rexon would know what her holy mission is because, yeah, the way okay, yeah, sure, lore. Are slimes hot? I mean, they are the equivalent of computers in Indines, so I assume they get like physically hot. And if you're into gelatinous blobs, I guess? I don't know, that's up to you. I do not yuck on yums. Drink water? That's true, but also, I can't. So, yeah, I'm sorry I can't. All right, let's answer some questions. So, Beanborg and Kevin, I can talk to you about lore, but what about Lord? What about the lore, right? Ask me something about the lore. Don't just say, hey, more lore. Ask me a specific question. Redimus asks, love to see what this world would look like as an RPG. Good next step. Wink, hush, hush, wink. Wink, 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 wink. Wink, hush, wink, wink, wink. Okay, but real answer though, fun fact, the world of Indines started off as an RPG setting. The world of Indines was legit just an RPG setting. Some of your most favorite characters, including Hikaru, Kadath, and where are you? Voko. Some of your most beloved characters were player characters from that setting. Brad used to run a RPG campaign where Indines was the setting, and Hikaru, Kadath, and Voko are all player characters from that setting. Cool trivia, right? All right. Exceed Shrek when? So if you've been listening to the podcast for the answer to that, Brad just came back from Licensing Expo where all of the hot brands were there. So you can just check that out. When are you going to become a Gerard main? Hook, Larceny, OP, please nerf. I'm going to become a Gerard main when I want to be evil because he sounds like a real jerk. Who is your favorite character and why is it Twilight Magdalena? Who is my favorite character and why is it Twilight Magdalena? It is not Twilight Magdalena, unfortunately. I like Twilight Magdalena. She's cool. My favorite character is a non-playable character from Indines called Wilhelm Bartz. I do not have art of him right now, but he's in Argent and I believe Imperial. What's the lore behind Wilhelm Bartz? Wilhelm Bartz is a student and or graduate student in Argent University. He is a mathematician. His entire point is that his realm of magic allows him to manipulate probabilities, numbers, and the like. Because magic in Indines is kind of like very formulaic, right? You do a thing. It's basically you can learn magic in Indines, right? And it's not some wishy-washy thing. It's literally like math, you know? It's like if you add X to Y to Z, you get A, right? So that's how magic in Indines works. Math and magic allows you to manipulate probabilities and numbers. Wilhelm Bartz, in his research into the world of Indines, realized one thing, is that in the world of Indines, things don't make sense Why is the world structured in such a way that there are weird angel aliens, but also weird different kinds of aliens? Why does everybody have magic for some inexplicable reason? Like, there's just a bunch of things that are all inconsistent and, like, seemingly don't make sense to be in the same world together. Therefore, Wilhelm, shockingly, came with one conclusion for his dissertation. The world of Indines is nothing more than the setting to a board game, and that he and all residents of Indines are simply characters of this board game. Hence, he is my favorite character in all of Indines, because that's just great. Because he's Deadpool of Indines. He's self-aware and knows that he's in the game. But he proved it mathematically. Alright. Who has the coolest backstory, in my opinion? I just said it. It's Wilhelm Bartz. Will the Grand Chronicles provide a story mode for us to reenact the battles of Indines? Not exactly, but it will provide you the story for a lot of those so you can reenact it yourself. Okay. How does Oriax hack the gods? So this has a lot to do with the organization that Oriax is part of, called Division 13. Not to be confused with Organization 13, which is from Kingdom Hearts. So, Organization 13 is a spec ops unit from the country of Willat, which is the Elven nation in Indines. And for those who don't know, Willat is the world or the city where characters like Rukyuk, where are you? Otavia 6, right? Klenhide 8. So these are the countries where they are from. And you'll notice that they are very cyberpunk, sci-fi kinds of characters. Because Willat, the Elven nation, is the most technologically advanced nation in the world. Why, you may ask? Because elves live longer than all the other races, which means the smart people, or the smart elves, stay alive longer. Which means they have more time to develop technology and progress science. So there you go. So imagine if Einstein could live to 400 years old, how much more advanced we would be. Hence, Willat is in cyberpunk era when everybody else is in medieval era. So what's Division 13? Division 13 is a spec ops unit for the country of Willat. Willat is governed by 13 magisters who are basically the president, right? Like, they all form this council, which is effectively the leadership of the country. And each one of them is a pioneer in a specific branch of science or magic. And each one of them contributes a spec ops unit agent to the government when they get co-signed as a Magister of Willat. And there you go. Seraphina is one of the Magisters of Willat. She's from Fate, I believe. Seraphina. Here's Seraphina. She's a Magister of Willat. She specializes in understanding chemicals and how they interact with the human body. So, or at least the biological body. So her contribution is actually a character from Devastation called Klenhide 8, who is a homunculus who injects himself with lots of drugs. Because she specializes in that. There you go. So, how does this bring us back to Oriax? Basically, Oriax has found a way to hack gods. And that has a lot to do with how divinity magic works in Indines. Divinity magic is not about faith or religion or belief, right? Divinity magic in Indines is a transaction. God wants X, provide X to God, God will give you Y, right? So, for example, oh, the great god Sanghalia wishes for you to spend 7 nights in prayer in a desert, and then she will bestow upon you, I don't know, intelligence or something. So even if you don't believe in Sanghalia, even if you don't believe in anything, right? If you stay in the desert for 7 days, you get the blessing. That's it. It's a pure transaction. Oriax is able to god hack by not having to perform the transaction to gain the benefits. So rather than having to spend those 7 days in the thing, Oriax just quote-unquote hacks the gods by tricking them into thinking that he's performed the ritual, and then he just gains the benefits. That's it. Create templates for fan creators. Perhaps we can do that. Let me just answer some of these questions. Is the bar fighting... So bar fighting game is 7-card slugfest. It's fun. It doesn't play like BattleCon at all. It's a physical dexterity game. But it's still hilariously fun, and I think you should try it out. KH is dead. Yes, I'm sorry, Violet. I will not bring it up, dear. Will the Grand Chronicle include everyone's little perks like Rexan's Persuasion and Riflin's Mental Sniffing? I have no idea if we will include the wild magics in the Grand Chronicle. Maybe we will, maybe we won't. Who knows? Indines box made entirely of Xehanort promos. When? That's called Fate of Indines. It's already done. Will Brad someday make all members of Division 13 playable? Not sure. I'm not even sure if some of them would work as playable characters. For example, like Atlas Zero, who is literally just a computer virus. Like, how do you play a computer virus? That's weird. Rook 14. Yes, Rook 14 is an alternate reality Rookyuk, so we don't know. Himmel 9 is indeed a playable character. And Himmel 9 is indeed actually just in this module. So if you want to see what Himmel 9 looks like, where are you, Himmel? There you go. This is his kit. This is what he does. Yeah. Yeah. He's a tank. He's a walking tank robot thing. That's just what Himmel does. That's what Himmel do. Alice Zero never. Yeah. What's Carolyn's lore? Simple. Carolyn is a homunculus, right? She is an artificial being created using biomancy, which is one of the branches of magic in Indines. Her creator is Aaron Ross, a scientist of Willat, who is a pioneer of biomancy. The Willati government actually wanted to make him into a magister because he was so good at biomancy. But then he was like, no thanks. I want to keep my work independent. Willati government smiles and says, that's fine, but really it's not, because the Willati government is the Willati government. So they had Aaron Ross assassinated. And now, Aaron Ross's assistant, Lixis, is working with Carolyn, and they're hiding from the Willati government. That's the lore. Background, not much background. Carolyn's a shape-shifting homunculus. She has a sister named August. Oh, that's cool. Maybe I'll explain this point of lore. Carolyn actually has a sister named August, which is why one of her finishers is called the August Strain. So Carolyn is the Mark II homunculus, right? Her older sister August came before her. August's thing is that she has no limiter, which means that August can freely transform her body into any shape she desires. But notice if you look at Carolyn's art, or most of Carolyn's art, Carolyn technically usually has to stay in a humanoid shape, right? So even if she transforms her legs or arms, she still retains a humanoid shape. This is because Carolyn has a built-in limiter that limits how far she can shapeshift. Because August could freely shapeshift, and that was really bad for August because August eventually lost her ability to reform right? And August basically went out of control and exploded. So Carolyn has a limiter to prevent her from turning into August and exploding. And that's why the August strain is, she says, if I have to become a monster to survive, then so be it. Because she literally removes her limiter to allow her to transform even more than she currently can, which is why it gives her more forms. Which is why she can apply a third style to all of her attacks for the rest of the game. That's it. Himmel9 is a character that will be in Unleashed at some point. I'm not sure if they'll be in Unleashed or if Himmel will become a separate character. But again, as I've said on many times on this show, if the character is in this module as a promo, they will pop up eventually. All damage is reduced to 1. Yes, Beanborg. Essentially, Himmel can never take more than 1 damage. I mean, yes, Hydrofork is the superior finisher. Ryan Torres asks, who is Caesar in allegiance with? Caesar is from the country of Sanghalem. Oh, sorry, Relicor. Is it Relicor or Sanghalem? I think it's Sanghalem or Relicor. Either way, he is part of an organization called the Relic Hunters. Their job is to find dangerous relics in the world, get them, and then put them in a vault where nobody can abuse them. So imagine they're kind of like Men in Black, but instead of hunting for aliens, they hunt for dangerous artifacts. Characters that are in the game that are in cahoots with Caesar are Enderbite, as well as, where's Trials? Amon. And Caesar. Caesar. Where are you, Caesar? There you go. So these 3 characters are actually part of the same relic hunting team. They all have different specializations. So Caesar's the muscle, Amon's the defensive, like he's the boss, and Enterbite's their suitcase. Because he what do you call this? He's the one where they put the artifacts in and he transports them. So here's the cool thing is that the dynamic of this is really fun because essentially Amon is always business all the time. And Enderbite basically acts like a shonen protagonist, or at least a comic book superhero where he thinks he's cool and stuff, and he says quippy one-liners. And then Caesar is basically Auron from Final Fantasy X. So he's just like, he just grunts and stuff. And then when you do something stupid, he'll make fun of you. So there you go. They're a cool trio of characters. I like them. Did Oriana and Agena successfully accomplish their evil plans? It depends on what the degree of the evil plan is. Oriana was successfully able to use Lim to enter into Indines, but not completely. So there you go. Agena failed for sure because the Dragon King Greyheart did not revive. Enderbite is Karn. I don't know. Karn actually seems like a reasonable person, right? Is Karn snarky and fun? I never knew that. Karn from Magic the Gathering, for people who don't know. All right. Are there any more questions? I think we should be winding down on the stream right now. So I'll answer maybe like 2 to 3 more questions and then I'll sign off. Yeah, Lim is just, you know, Cherry in a fursuit or something. Indines World Dating Simulator. Beanborg, I'm gonna one-up you on that. Level 99 games game dating simulator. Prepare for a world where you can date BattleCON Chan, Exceed Kun, Pixel Tactics San, you know. Has Melandrex ever met Carolyn in person? I don't know. That's not in the lore. By the way, for the people who don't know, Ma is asking this because Melandrax is the soul of Aaron Ross given life again, but without the quote-unquote memories of Aaron Ross. So imagine like you just had Aaron Ross, but his memory was wiped. It's kind of what Melandrax is. So any more questions? If not, Indines succeed when? Indines succeed when it happens. I don't know. Really, I don't know when Indines succeed is. Hopefully before Trolls succeed. Nostros. So Nostros is the current Chancellor of Argent. And he's the guy who steps down, which causes the seat for Chancellorship to open, which is why the entire game of Argent, the Consortium, happens, right? Nobody knows what his powers are because he's that awesome. I kid you not, that is literally what Brad told me. Shrek Exceed? Beanborg, Shrek Exceed. No. Trolls Exceed? Maybe. Millennium Blades CCG when? Probably never. No, it's Aaron, not Aaron. We're not talking about Game Grumps, babe. Ugh. Why should all the PaperCon players come and battle us on BCO? Simple. It's easier to find games against opponents. There's voice acting, cool music, cool art, cool video effects, and you don't have to make sure that the rules are correct because the game handles the rules for you. Oh, and I guess the community is pretty cool too. Millennium Blades CCG went? Yeah, I mean, like, it just goes against entirely what Millennium Blades is, which is explicitly not a CCG. I mean, of course, the real answer is Millennium Blades is already a CCG. What are you talking about? Okay, I think I've answered enough questions for tonight. So thank you all so much for being on the stream with me. Come play BCO. It's good. Yeah, BCO is great. All right. So thank you all so much for being on stream with me. And I'm really glad that you were all here. If you have any more questions, if you're watching this as a VOD, comment your questions. I will answer them. Feel free to comment your questions if you're still watching this live. Don't type in the live chat. Comment the questions so that I can answer them when I wake up tomorrow, because it's like midnight right now and I'm about to die. So without much else to say, thank you so much for watching this stream, and thank you, World of Indines. Thank you, and good night. Oh, by the way, don't forget your special action. Well, I guess that's irrelevant now. Don't forget your Switch. Don't forget your Switch. Don't forget your Switch. All right. Thanks, everyone. Goodbye. Happy gaming.